Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Well, hello and welcome to this episode of our program. This is Mike Saunders with Marketing Huddle, and today we're privileged to have with us Judy Robinett. Welcome to the program, Judy.
Thank you. Delighted to be here.
Hey, so I know that people can read your storied past and bio on your website, so I would like to jump right in with the focus of today's topic, which is, power networking. So if you could give us maybe a Reader's Digest version of kind of your background, your VC, your funding, and your networking story, and then let's lead right into the book, because I know that from reading your book, and as a side note, I know that I mentioned this to you right as we started, but I love reading books on Kindle, because then you do your little highlighted sections, and then rather than flipping through the Kindle again to read your highlights, because I love doing that, Amazon Kindle has this wonderful thing. You go to like kindle.highlights.amazon and log into your account, and you see the book, and then you can just quickly scan all of the highlights, all compiled and compressed right there. So I lost count at over 100 highlights in your book. So I know that as you started off in that book, you were talking about your background and what led you to networking and all of that. So kind of bring us up to speed on that, and then we'll launch into how people can become a top-notch networker.
Thanks, Mike. So, my dad retired from the military and moved me to this tiny town in Idaho. And if you've watched Napoleon Dynamite, I went to that high school. And I was really kind of a nobody. I didn't fit in, and I was really shy, and then I was bullied. And felt that way for years and years. And when I entered the corporate world, I had learned, like most people have, and research shows that if you've been raised lower to middle class, you're taught, get the degree, get a great job, keep your head down, work, don't ask for help, people will notice. And I found out in my first corporate Fortune 300 jobs that necessarily didn't work. And I started watching, and I found out there was this whole underlying power network structure in a corporation that was very different than the org chart. And, I would go to corporate events, and I would show up late, and I would leave early. And so what I first did was I read a book called How to Win Friends and Influence People. And, I started saying hello to people and found out people liked me okay, which was kind of a shock. I didn't think I had much to offer. And from there, I just kept getting a little braver, taking a little bit more risk to, the point today I do serve on venture capital boards, high-end accelerators. I give speeches around the world. I've been to the White House twice this year. Probably won't get invited this next year. And I discovered that really the secret is just 25 to 50 key people that are very diverse, that are robust, meaning they'll pick up the phone, they'll have your back and have your future. What I typically see is people, if I ask them to write down the 25 to 50 people that are just beyond their family and their friends, it's people just like them. And the problem is, Mike, that when you need to find a new job or you need to get funding for your startup, you hit the wall, and then it's a hard time to move forward. And I started realizing, and the rule is groups fall apart at 150. You don't need gazillions of people. You just need a few really good people.
That's a really good point, because it kind of gets back to focus. You can't focus on too many things and multitasking, and people think they're good at multitasking, but then study shows, they aren't, and all of those kind of things. And I think that's really, really massively huge for people to keep in mind. You feel forced, I've got this many Facebook friends, this many LinkedIn contacts. Come on, are they really, or are they just numbers and vanity metrics? So I love one of the highlights that I highlighted in your book. It says you build a strong network by investing in it over a lot of years, helping people and connecting with each other, and then you continue to say if you invest in your network, it will grow exponentially. But if you think of your network as only useful to you, your network will become weaker. You should always be thinking of how to put two people together. So my question is, how is the most beneficial way to put people together? Because like what you just said, you've got to have that, network that is tight. You can't have 150. You need to have the 50,
Yeah. So, what I found out was that everybody's got problems. And I didn't realize this. I thought it was me, that other people, they were born into wealthy families. They went to Harvard or Stanford, things that I would never be able to do. And so it was kind of an eye-opener to me to figure out everybody on the planet, as long as you're alive, has got a problem. And for every problem, there's a solution. So, for instance, on funding, there's $369 trillion of private global household wealth. There's no lack of money. Countless ideas and opportunities, but they're all attached to people. And so my first thing that I tell people, because I really hate the word networking, I think it's manipulative, it's ugly, I hate showing up to events, I don't go to them. The people come running at you with a business card, they don't care about you. It's all me, which sounds very narcissistic, and I try to avoid what I call the dark triad, the Machiavellian, the narcissistic, and the sociopath. I want you to be careful. So if you base your networking efforts on generosity and caring about other people, that puts you like in the top 2 to 3% of people out there. And so very simply, when I meet someone, I find out, what they're working on now or what their goals are. And then I try to add value immediately. For instance, if somebody tells me they want to be an author, I send them the proposal that got me my book published by McGraw-Hill. If they tell me I'll offer to introduce them to my agent. So it turns out if you just practice caring, you just figure out a way that you can add a little value to make their day better. And it can be simple. I mean, with strangers, smiling is a gift. Few people take the time to just say hello. So it doesn't have to be something that's like over the top, spend $1,000 sending somebody a gift. It turns out that those kind of high-end emotional skills, listening, between the lines with your heart, your ears, and your head, those things really make the difference. But it's really adding value and learning how to do that. Now, I keep top books that I recommend for people. I'm kind of a voracious reader. I will read through a pitch book on, deals that have been done. I get quartz.com, which is a wonderful global newsletter that has stuff that's curated. So I can just, in the morning, if I open those and read, I can click and send it off to 4 or 5 people. So it doesn't take a lot of time, and people love that because they know you care. You have their back.
That's you touched on a couple things, and I made a quick note to touch on them real quick. One is giving, and the other is tools and efficiencies. So number one, it reminded me that next week I'm interviewing the one and only Bob Berg, and we're going to talk about, the go-giver movement, the philosophy, the mindset, and it really is, and too many people think, giving, and that takes too much time. Well, networking takes time too, because they forget it's working, and you got to do it the right way, but you got to do some effort. And I think the problem is that too many people go to a new relationship or something with their hand out going, gimme, gimme, gimme. But, what if you can approach it with that go-giver attitude and a genuine attitude, not just, you can tell when someone's doing something and like the bellhop in the movies, they're standing there with their hand out and it's like, come on, you just carried my bags up to get that tip. But the other thing that I think you said, which is really powerful, which is it doesn't take much. This give thing, it's like, oh my word, you read the book Giftology and you're thinking, man, I got to send out these big old gifts and spend a lot of money, and that's a great concept and it works. I've read that book and it's wonderful, but how about that smile? How about that encouragement? What if you made the goal of every day to find someone in your power network and you look through their social media stream, let's say, and you notice that they posted whatever or some news release came out about them, and you just complimented them on that and said, wow, what a lot of work that must have been, and what a great feeling. Hey, congrats. Not any other thing, but then just give them that encouragement. And then the other thing I think that you really did well, or made a great point with, is that you can use some technology, whether it's an RSS feed reader or Feedly, but something where if you are so zoned in on your top networking group, your 50, not 450, well, then you start having things in the back of your mind going, oh, Tom, that's a good article for him. Oh, hey, Betty, I read something. Well, if you have 428 contacts, it's way harder. So can you speak a little bit more about once you've kind of narrowed it down, you've got your 50 you're focusing on, how do you make sure that you are helping to give back to them and knowing what they actually need, because that's a hard thing. You normally see a name and a number and an email and you fire away, but how do you get to know someone on a deeper level? And I would suspect kind of like the Harvey Mackay 66 kind of comes into play.
Well, actually, I'm good friends with Bob Berg. Tell him hi. And I gave a speech with John of Giftology recently, and you don't have to work so hard at it. And if you just start doing these little things daily, you find, people will say to me, oh, it takes so much time to network or to, think through this and strategize. And it really doesn't. So just in the space of my day, if something comes up or I see, I get a LinkedIn notification, like yesterday, I found this great YouTube video by this Rear Admiral on why it is so important to make your bed. Well, I was intrigued, and I went and listened, and it was some of the best information I could have found. Well, I found it so fascinating, I sent it to all my favorite people because I knew they would love it. And so, I don't have this system, and I don't really have a CRM. I use Outlook. But I do consciously keep in mind, if I find something good, I should pass it along, pay it forward. That it will, if I have found it valuable, other people will as well, and it could change their life. And so, that's, and I don't subscribe to lots and lots of newsletters, but I do have maybe 3 or 4. And I have a friend who sends me some of the top financial reports. And so, I'm friends with Dan Glazer, Sasha at Wilson Sonsini, the best-known startup firm in the world. I know kind of what they work on, what they're interested in. Dan does transatlantic deals going back and forth with London. He worked with over 100 incubators over there. So if I find something on an entrepreneur, I go, oh, I need to send this to Dan Glazer at Wilson Sonsini. I need to send it to Heidi Rosen at Draper VC. I sit on the board of Illuminate VC. So, it isn't so much strategy. I just have embedded in my mind that if I find something useful, I should share. And people know if I send them something. I'm sorry?
I'm sorry. Continue your thought.
If I'm going to send them something or make an introduction, then they know it's valuable. So now, I'll have 2 people in my network that don't know each other, or I meet someone and I'll say, you need to talk to Lauren Roosh, who's the vice president of Nickelodeon. And here's the number. And Lauren will write back to me and say, don't have any idea what we're going to talk about, but I trust Judy, we need to talk. Mm-hmm. So that's what I mean about robust, because I don't do it just to create value. It's not really creating value for myself, but it does because it shows I care about them, and then they will keep their eyes open for me. Now, a concept that I teach people is you share with others your story or your project or, obstacles you're dealing with. And then you ask what I call my 2 golden questions. Number 1, what other ideas do you have for me? And number 2, who else do you know I should talk to? And this is really a critical point. And I'll give you an example. I was in New York meeting with 3 or 4 really high-level attorneys. They, make $5 to $10 million annually. They're at the top of the game. And they all knew each other. I was a new person, so I was going around seeing what they were interested in, how I could help them. And the one woman said, I'm one of the tops in the world. I understand the SEC, everything. Someday I might want to be on the SEC's commission. And her best friend sitting next to her took her hand and slapped her on the arm and said, get out of here. I know Joe. Mm. And they both kind of looked at each other. So what happens is we have people, but we've not really educated them. So they're aware that they could help. Mm-hmm. And most people will help if you just, ask.
I think that's a huge thing, and you think in sales, sometimes it's like, well, man, you got it right to the finish line, you just didn't ask for the business. You're like, well, if you're interested, let me know, and then off you go because you didn't want to ask the question. And people intrinsically do want to help. Hey, can I get you help on something? Or one of the most powerful words in the English language is someone's own name. Hey, Judy, could I ask your help on this? And I think that's just massively huge. And there's a part of our brain called the reticular activator, which I'm so intrigued with, in the sense that you buy a new red Ford Focus, and you start noticing all the Ford Focuses on the road. All of a sudden they're all over, but they've always been there. You just didn't remember. And it's like, hey, look. And my kids did that the other day. My daughter got a new old Toyota Corolla, and they started and they literally came in. They're like, hey, we saw all these Toyota Corollas just like Aria's, and I'm like, I said, and I explained to them exactly what I just said. I'm like, isn't that interesting? You guys go to school the same way every day. Those cars were there last week and the week before, but because you just noticed that Aria got this Toyota Corolla, you now notice them. So when we start investing in our network and learning what they're doing, what they need, listening, watching online, and what powerful research tools we have these days, but Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn and all these things, we can watch our network and go, oh, hey, that's pretty good. And now when we're doing our research and networking ourselves, something should trigger in our mind, oh, yeah, Jordan would be really interested in this. I'm going to either make a mental note or I'm going to make an introduction right here. I think it's just that whole keeping things in the front of our mind of what is in front of us and who can benefit from that.
Yeah, and you can make it really simple, Mike. I often tell people I want you to make 2 introductions this week to people that don't know each other. I want you to talk to 2 strangers this week. Now, research shows we only talk to strangers 2 to 3% of the time, and that's really sad. I mean, I literally met a billionaire hiking in Park City. It's sad because most people, it is true, 4 to 5% of people are that dark triad, bad actors that you don't want in your network. But the rest of the people are good people. Now, if you meet somebody and they don't resonate with you, you just go next. But the reality is you help somebody, even if they don't help you back, you've learned something. So, for instance, a friend of mine sent me an email on Friday, said, geez, the doctor said I've got water on my lung and my gallbladder's not working, and he just retired and I'm on the waiting list. Well, I called her on the phone because I was really concerned something serious was wrong. I had her son come and get her, drive her to the University of Utah ER. She was just diagnosed with lung cancer. Now, that phone call took me 5 minutes. 5 minutes. And, her doctor down there said I could have saved her life. Now, I think that's probably a stretch. But, throughout the day, it can just be just little tiny things. But if you make a couple of introductions, you talk to a couple of strangers, then you start, getting in your brain how easy it is really to add value, and it just becomes a part of who you are. Now, the other really profound thing to do is to go to a powerful organization or a curated. So most people have heard of Renaissance Weekend. I actually met Heidi Rosie Rios, who just retired as the longest U.S. treasurer in the United States, at Alley to the Valley. It's for 50 professional women, and it's across different sectors. People in business, I often say, go to ACG, the Association of Corporate Growth. It's CXO level people across all industries. And these are groups that are put together because people know the higher you go how critical it is to be a strategic networker. There's some recent research that was done of wealth managers who annually pocket $1 million and have for over the past 20 years. It found out they have 4 key connections in their network. Now, the reason that works is research shows your influence is limited to a friend of a friend of a friend, so it's only at 3 levels. Now, I went to the White House for a fintech conference, met fabulous people. But here where I'm sitting right now in Idaho, I have 2 neighbors that are truck drivers. Now, they're a friend of a friend of a friend, is very different than the people that were in D.C. at the meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And likewise, if you just meet people one by one networking, and we meet about 10,000 people over our lifetime, that's very different than going to one of these groups. And it can even be, like I volunteered for United Way when I was much younger, and I volunteered to be on the finance committee because I didn't know how to do budgets, and I could see in my future career I had better learn how to do that. Well, then I could add this item that I had managed a $3 million budget, which helped me land that first job at Fortune 300 company. And so there's organizations like that where the people of influence and gravitas in your community are there, and you can rub shoulders with them, and then you can ask, for help. And I'll tell you, I loved what you said about, using a person's name, and that one's powerful. But Dave Burkus, who is a super angel investor, wrote an excellent blog. And he said, and I really believe this is true, that besides the 3 words, I love you, please help me. Very few people, if you say that, will turn an eye away from you. And part of that is you're being authentic, and you've humbled yourself a bit. But most people will help you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one thing that you said there that really struck me that I think people should pause and not gloss over is the number 2. Now, it could have been the number 1 or the number 3. It's not necessarily the 2, but it's the fact that it's something attainable. And I think that if you set these micro goals, let's call them achievable micro goals of, I get all this. I need to strategically network. I need to give and serve, and I need to focus on, the 50, not 450 or 950. So I can't get there overnight. So this week or today, I'm going to talk to 1. Or if you do go to that networking meeting, I'm going to find 2 people I can introduce to each other. Not me, but I'm going to introduce. And I think that's a mindset that too many people feel overwhelmed, where it's like, I'm going to make 100 cold calls today to get a sale. Maybe if you can make those 2 introductions today, and tomorrow make 1, the next day make 3, but these small bits will have that cumulative effect. I think that's a huge, huge takeaway for people.
Yeah, it's and I'll tell you another one is people don't use the network they've already got. And I'll give you an example. My agent called me and she said, I'm going to introduce you to Mike Muni. He built and sold DAX software for $65 million. He's got a new platform on connecting Viper. And I think you guys ought to talk. We got on the phone. He flew to Salt Lake to meet with me. And I said, Mike, I'm stunned. I haven't heard anything about your app, and I read a lot. What are you doing for marketing? And he looked so sad, and he said, oh, Judy, if I could just get an article in Success Magazine, that would be my niche. That would be my ideal customer. And I looked at him, and I said, Mike, when you go home, I want you to call Wendy, my agent, who I've known for less than 6 months, who you've known for 6 years. One of her friends is Dan Hardy, the owner and publisher of Success Magazine. And he almost fell off his chair. So
it was right under my nose.
Yeah, right under their nose. And this happens a lot. And part of it is you have to tell people what you need. They can't help unless you educate them a bit.
Yeah, that is just so huge because it's kind of like a lot of people would say, well, you speak it out and things start to happen. I don't think it's that. I just think it's like people in your network just need to know, oh, is that all you need? Or that reminds me. And you know what? Here's something really interesting. Just when you see the timing of things, and I really, really believe that when you are consciously watching for things for someone else and opportunities for yourself, let's not get past the point that giving and serving and watching for ways to help other people still is, you got to watch out for yourself to build your business, because if that's what you're doing, it can't be overly selfish, but at the same time you need to say, I need this type of connection so that I can get my product off the ground. Well, there's nothing wrong with that, but the timing of that is so interesting, because I know in my career I've had some people call or email back and go, funny, you should and I know you've got 400 stories on that as well, but it's like, wow, the timing of that. If I had asked that question 2 weeks ago to that person, they would have gone, oh, hey, we'll keep you in mind. But today I asked it or I mentioned it in passing, and it just was a match.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's taken me years to get over being shy, and it turns out that half of the people in the United States think they're shy. But the reality is it's less than 10%, which shows it's your self-worth, your beliefs about yourself and your assumptions about yourself. And so, and the best way to deal with that, and I often tell people to talk to 3 or 4 of their friends and say, hey, what are my top 3 or 4 strengths? And people are all often stunned to find out things about themselves that everybody else saw that they didn't. And so the better you can get at making your blind spot smaller by using the intelligence, the knowledge that other people have is absolutely critical for you as well. And then the second thing I have people do is a victory log. And I'd read an article on this 20 years ago that you just take a piece of paper, write a victory log, number down the page to 50, write down things you're proud you've accomplished, little things, medium or big things. I've got on mine the first time I made $30,000 a year as a social worker, and when I became CEO of a public company, I made $350,000 a year. And when I, did my first across-the-border trip to Mexico, and when I did 40 trips to Europe and India and Colombia. And looking back, it's stunning because I would have never guessed I would have ever written a book, given not 1 but 2 TED Talks. And it helps you because, we all have weaknesses, and I think that many people focus on those internally, and they shouldn't. They should really... I actually got quoted on Forbes, for this. You should take courage from your hope and not your fear.
I love that victory log. I have something I've done for years called the gratitude journal, which is the same type of concept where it's like you don't want to overlook you get the big promotion, and that's big. You think about that, remember it. But how about that little thing today, which was whatever, and if you can mark in time, hey, this happened today. I'm really grateful for X. And then you go back through that, maybe end of the year kind of a thing, and it's like, wow, that was good. And I think it's wonderful to remember. And like in your victory log, you go back and you're like, oh, I remember those days. And what happens then is something inside of you kind of, repercolates and sparks up, and it just really reinvigorates yourself to go, you know what, doggone it, I was kind of going through a little moment of time today where I thought, I'm kind of not making progress, but I'm looking back here and I've made a little bit more progress than I thought. So I think that really is another way to reinforce our own beliefs in ourselves, and then that solidifies what we're doing for other people as well. And passing along a little tip like that to someone is a great way to serve.
Yeah, and I tell people, kick fear to the curb. I was giving a speech once at MIT, and somebody handed me a Wall Street Journal, and it said there's 5 ways to be financially independent, be a doctor, a lawyer, inherited or married. And I thought, well, those are out. Number 5 was start a business. And I went, well, how hard could it be? And I quickly found out. I thought I was going bankrupt and went to attorney just shaking. I mean, I had actually had a dream that I had committed suicide. And the attorney said to me, you're not even close. And I said, but I'm broke. And he said, Judy, they can break you, but they can't eat you. And that has been just really powerful for me to realize that there's very few things in life that can kill you. You have to get out of your head and sometimes just say stop and focus on whether it's positive affirmations. And the gratitude is nice, but I really like the victory log because you can see accomplishments and things that you can be, proud of. So
that actually happened.
Yeah.
That's just huge. So, hey, I have a feeling that we could probably talk for about 3.5 more hours and not even catch our breath and still keep on going. So let's wrap it up with letting our listeners know from these networking, power networking, crush the fear, log the victories. From these types of things, what's the best way that someone can learn more about yourself, your books, your writings, your speeches? So if they wanted to pick up your current book and then any other projects you're working on, what's the best way they can learn more about you?
Well, I do have a website, just Judy Robinett, and I'm on Twitter at Judy Robinett and certainly LinkedIn. And my email is judy@judyrobinett.com. No E on the end of Robinett. And, I'm happy to help.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. It's just really wonderful to kind of have this, it seemed like, this whole conversation just started with one question and then it blossomed from there. And when that happens, it's a really special time. So thank you so much for your time and for all the work you do in the industry.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneurssradio.com.